The first item is a bag of bags. Now that I've deleted any shipping labels visible, I'm expecting these to be USB related because I ordered things all on the same order. And this was the tracking. It's really hard to focus. I got 10 of these USB-C breakout header modules. So they have VBus and ground, data plus minus, and then CC1 and 2, which are those configuration control ID sort of pins. You might need to put some resistors there to get it to function depending what we're doing. I should probably be stocking up on stuff like this anyway and phasing out usage of the older cables. And on that note, I have a couple of these short cables. There's a USB A to C, a very short one, then a somewhat longer one. There's two of those. So what I'm doing here is, if I have a module that needs USB-C, but I only need to go a very short distance, like maybe plugging it directly into a hub on a workbench or something, I'm finding it useful to have these instead of those 3-foot or 6-foot cables I have to wrap around and put a Velcro tie on to keep it in check. So just getting some inventory. And I don't know if I want to take these out of the package. It's just vertical PCB mount USB-C sockets. So if I'm going to do a circuit board, in some cases, I may want a USB jack coming up vertically off of a circuit board instead of right angle to the side. And on that note, then I may have a need to plug in a short USB-C cable and only be going a short distance. So just getting some parts together, and finally in this collection, a couple of dongles that are USB-A, female to female, so I can use them as a coupler. For example, if I have something like this, it's not a typical usage case, but if I wanted to go USB-C to C, but I only had this kind of cable, I can adapt it like this, and short term, just for workbench stuff, I can use it as a data cable. But I also have another use case for these, which is definitely not normal usage. Maybe on one side I still want to go to USB-C, and let's say on the other side I want to go to a USB mini, and the only cable I have is a normal USB-A to mini, so I plug that in. I can then use this coupler with existing cables I have and do what I need to do. This one, I think I know what it is. It's one of those cases like you might get an assortment of trim pots or transistors or washers, but there's no sound, there's nothing bulky. So I'm thinking it's, and it looks like it is, those carbon pads, conductive pads. So the smallest size, I can't even see. Oh, I think it's written on there. Is that an 8? And 1.5 millimeters. Very small. Depending how I press it, it's a couple of hundred ohms. I don't want to really put a hole through it with the sharp probes. So I have a remote control for an old receiver where some of the buttons, of course, aren't working. I took it apart, did all the usual cleaning of the pads and the board, got rid of the oily residue, but it's still not working. So I'm thinking the pads are worn out. I'm going to use these to try to fix that at some point. This one's a little heavy, and these are brass hooks, or whatever it's actually made of. I think I got 50 of them. So I think for 25, it was like $4 something. And just like with other hardware like nuts and bolts, it's stupidly expensive to go to a local store. Like, you might see a package of 2 of these or even 5 of these for like $3. So if I can get 25 for $4 something and free shipping, that's what I'm going to do. And the reason I got these and this size specifically, I did have a package of these I got somewhere years ago, and I'm running out because I have been using them all over the basement for long-term temporary cable management, running things like overhead lamp cords over along the joists, maybe up and down the stud wall just to keep it in general orientation and be able to plug it in. So I'm using them as retainers like that very successfully, and I want to use a few more, but I was running out. So these are going to go in the collection. That says 3x6x5, and those are just little through-hole tactile push-button switches. And the bag doesn't describe these. There's two different ones though I think I ordered. 2N4401 and 2N5088. I don't even remember what these two specifically are. I think the 4401 is similar enough to other generic interchangeable ones, and I think the 5088 is maybe a higher gain or something like that. There might be differences like maximum handling voltage compared to similar rated ones, but I wanted to get a broader supply of transistors as well as some more JFETs, and I wanted lower gain and higher gain to substitute in and out for testing because I want to do some more guitar effect experiments. So if I'm making a fuzz pedal, which is a distortion of sorts, sometimes if it's a 2-transistor circuit, you might want a lower gain and then a higher gain, or the other way around, whichever. So having sockets on a board and swapping around, you can get the right match. So as usual, there's too much to go through. I'm gonna look at this stuff and try to remind myself what I got and talk about a few highlights. So all kinds of packages of transistors just to do various experiments. And I have a bunch of different potentiometers, also primarily for guitar or other audio related stuff. And I went with this form factor for now, partly because it's a small form factor and you can fit a bunch of these side by side. So if you have a guitar pedal that might be only that wide, you can have 3 or 4 of these easily, and then even more. And this says A102, so I think that's a 1K audio taper. HV5222, 44-pin PLCC. This has serial interface, and then 32 parallel output pins, which are, I think, 220 volt compatible. So you can use these to bring something like a high voltage Nixie tube or a Nixie tube dot to ground to turn it on and complete the circuit. Because the other common older drivers may be out of production, hard to find, even if you can get them used. If you want to build a new product, and if other people might want to build it and they can't get the obsolete stuff, at least this is an option that's in production that I wanted to test out and see if I can get my old Nixie displays running that I bought back in 2018. Here's an audio transformer. These are not 1-to-1. I think it's 600 ohms on one side and 1.5K on the other, or 1.2K on the other. So this can be used for all kinds of audio related things, between isolating signals, which can help get rid of ground loops. But if you have one side with more turns than the other, you can use it to impedance match, or you can use it to even just step an audio signal level up or down between circuit stages for different reasons. Again, there's something guitar effect related I want to try with these. So I obviously have some projects coming up. This Nixie tube driver thing, these audio transformers, otherwise a bunch of experimenting with transistors, trying to repair the remote control button pads. Thanks to channel and Patreon supporters for helping make all this possible.